I'm not used to this many positive things happening at once.
The craziest, perhaps craziest 36 hours in Louisville sports in the last 5, 6 years. And we're here to talk about all of it. Within the last week, I was just talking to Jake about this. I've kind of just lost a track of who I am as a person, what I'm supposed to do with my life. My work kind of like forced me to take some time off, and now I can't get back into it. Just came home, and my wife took some of the Christmas decorations down. My house feels so bare. It feels weird, and now I got to write 25 on everything. And I don't know what day it is or have any sort of sense of time. But what I do know, Jake Hook, is that Louisville basketball just notched one of its first major signature wins, definitely the biggest win of the Pat Kelsey era at home against North Carolina. Louisville just landed perhaps its biggest recruit in the last decade plus. Louisville football just won a very intense bowl game. It's been a fantastic 36, 48 hours, what have you. And we are here to catch you up on everything on the basketball side. Jake Hook, how we doing, man?
We're good. I was about to say, I'm not used to this many positive things happening at once. It seemed like in the past it was all negative, or we might get like one glimmer of positivity, like a Trenton Flowers signing, and then like
Mhm.
6 weeks later, it's like, no, actually, he's not going to play for you. So it's weird, everything going right for once. So it's kind of cool.
It's a bit of a sensory overload, right? Like, and you felt that in the Center a little bit, like I kind of tweeted out and I texted some people as well that it felt like it was a very New Year's Day feeling game. Like it was a hangover game. Like I was watching, we don't sit too far from the student section. I'm watching the student section, half of them are kind of sitting down, kind of taking plays off, if you will, which is understandable. I mean, shout out to the student section for filling it up after probably filling up on way too much, you know, way too many libations, if you will, the night before. Shout out to them for showing up, and shout out to a fantastic crowd for showing up. And even though it wasn't like, a crazy, like, once a year type of crowd, every 5 years type of crowd, it was a crowd that had something to cheer about at the end of the game. And we'll get into that a little bit. I think Louisville overcame a lot of punches from North Carolina. Instant reaction, Jake, from Louisville's 13-point win over North Carolina.
I mean, thrilled. Biggest home win, at least of the K. Oh my God, I almost said KP. Jesus Christ, PK era.
The PK,
uh,
yeah.
the PK era. But if you would have told me, because we were doing the predictions, I think I said like 79, 74. You were pretty similar to that as well. But if you would have told me before those predictions, hey, Louisville's going to shoot 23% from the field, only one player is going to hit more than 1 3. We're going to shoot 65% from the free throw line. I would have said, shit, UNC by 15 plus. So just kind of a wonder and hopefully a good sign for the future of this team. Because like we both said, we're so reliant upon jump shooting, or we had been in the past, that we're like, if we shoot 35%, we probably win. If we shoot under 30, we probably lose. If we're somewhere in between, it's a toss up. So it was really nice to see us struggle to shoot so badly and still be able to beat this team. And it was a lot closer than the 13-point show. But to be able to beat a quality team while struggling so poorly from behind the line, I think is a great sign for this team.
It's a great sign for the team. It's a great sign that we have a coaching staff that knows what the hell they're doing. I mean, the adjustments, especially the last 10-ish minutes of the game, right? North Carolina starts to push the pace a little bit. And that's what we talked about, right? Like I think you could kind of see it coming, right? Where North Carolina started to kind of dictate the tempo a little bit, and Louisville's kind of like, and I get it in a sense, right? Like it's like when my wife tries to get everybody to go to bed at night. Like we got 2 kids and 2 dogs in this house, and my ADHD can't help it. At like 8:30, I just want to be like the Grinch where he's like messing with the dog. He's like, that scene, what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I can't help it. I have to be like that and get the kids and dogs and everybody all riled up, and then bedtime's a nightmare. And it's the same, like it's that you have that instinct within you to, you know, keep doing what you want to keep doing, if that makes sense. And Louisville has an instinct. This is a team that all offseason and probably what this coaching staff still preaches a lot in practice is, pick up the pace, push the tempo, get other teams uncomfortable, get, open shots out of non-set plays, steal some possessions. Those are all things that this coaching staff preaches. And it's kind of goes against their nature to do that. But against the North Carolina team, when you're shorthanded and you're just trying to figure out ways to win games, you kind of had to go against that instinct. And in the last probably 5 minutes, Louisville just kind of took over. They dictated the tempo. They were the team that was the aggressor. They out rebounded North Carolina at the end of the game, multiple crucial rebounds. And it wasn't like they did it in a very Louisville way, too. And I think that was a question that we had coming into the season. And in the first few games of the season, it was a huge detriment to the team that they just couldn't. They were not a very good rebounding team starting out. And they figured out ways to become a good rebounding team without it being a traditional big man boxing out and somebody snagging the rebound, right? Like sealing your man off. It's become more like Noah Waterman tipping it out. So, James Scott fighting harder than everybody else to get a rebound and get it back out to the top of the key. On a missed North Carolina shot, just being in the right place at the right time. It seems like the instincts are taking over a little bit. This team is starting to gel a little bit better together. But I mean, overall, to me, I think the biggest takeaway though is this coaching staff. They seem like they know what they're doing. They're pushing the right buttons now. And then I think you can't talk about this game without talking about maybe the moment of the season, right? So the Noah Waterman play against EKU is fine, but that was against EKU. This is North Carolina. And to have that moment where, you're basically, it's an ATO, you're running, basically looked like a middle screen type of situation where, Rain Smith comes off curls around to the top right-hand side of the 3-point line, takes a deep, 27, 28 footer and just nails it. And that's, I talked about there being kind of a fatigue and a hangover kind of feeling in the center and maybe a sense of dread as well that, we haven't seen a team really finish out a game like that in a long time at the center. And for that moment to happen, for the play to run perfectly, for Rain Smith to just knock down that shot dead eye to push it open to a 7-point lead, like North Carolina was not coming back from that. Not this North Carolina team, at least. And it was just such a relieving moment. It's kind of stuff has been so bad for so long. It felt so cathartic in a sense, but also like I can't believe it's actually happening. It's like the first time that Chris Mack beat Virginia, right? Like it was that kind of moment. Like everybody was kind of holding their breath, almost walking on eggshells, kind of just waiting for something bad to happen, and for this to be another game where it was just we were almost there, but didn't push it over the edge. And then once it happened, it was just all those feelings came to the surface. What a moment! What a night! I mean, I can't say any more positive things about the way that Louisville finished that game.
Yeah, I think Debbie incidentally said it on the broadcast. Coach Kelsey can get an open 3-point shot for Rain Smith anytime he wants. Like he has a play in his playbook anytime. If we wanted to run 40 plays a game and Rain Smith shoot 43s in a game, he would have enough plays to do it. And he's ran so many like amazing half court set plays, particularly out of a timeout. With like 5-6 seconds left in the shot clock, where he's gotten wide open looks, and I think this is actually the first time that we've made the set play. So that was so nice. Rain was huge in the first half. Hit an and one, then hit a couple threes, scored 9, took a charge that took away an and one from Ian Jackson. So he was huge, and then that huge 3 at the end. It was just such a relief because it felt like we are dominating this game. I think we led for 35 of the 40 minutes. And I think UNC only led for like 1.5 minutes. I think I read that somewhere. And then the other 3 minutes, we were just tied. And then it seemed like as soon as we started missing the front end of those 1-on-1s, I think Noah Pryor missed one. I said Noah Pryor.
No,
Jesus Christ.
Noah Waterman.
Noah Waterman. Yeah.
There you go.
They're the love child of Noah and Kaysen. So Noah Waterman misses the front end. Chucky misses the front end. And the thing is, and then one other person, maybe it's Javon, maybe it's Terrence, I don't know, but 3 straight possessions where we missed the front end of a 1-and-1, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, UNC's back in the game, and you're like, what? Were we not just up 11 points? And it popped up that stat that showed how UNC scores like 11 more points on average in the second half, and I was like, oh
Yep.
my God, here it comes.
Right.
But
Yep.
I mean, thankfully, coached well, played well, made some big plays at the end, and really pushed the lead out at the very end of the game.
Yep. So I was going to say, by the way, just to interject real fast, North Carolina led for 24 seconds of the game. Their
Jesus.
largest lead was 1, and it was their last lead at 15-14.
Okay, gotcha.
Right?
See, I
Yeah.
thought no. See,
Last lead was
I thought they took a lead in the
that's
second half.
I thought they did too. I thought they were up by 1. It says
Uh,
last lead was 15-14
yeah, I see
with
that. Yeah, you're right.
10-15 left in the first half. It felt
Hmm.
like they took a lead for some reason. I don't know. Maybe they just pulled within 1 or tied the game. I'll have to go back and look at the ad box score, but I think it was, it got to 70-69 if I remember correctly, and then the final score ended up being 83-70. So, North Carolina. I mean, look, it felt like they were about to take a lead. And another huge game-changing moment that I didn't even realize until I was just kind of watching back and taking some notes this morning. Great block that I don't even think James Scott was credited for. North
Hmm.
Carolina down by 1. All their fans, they had a lot of fans in the arena, probably, I'd guess, 500 to 1,000 North Carolina fans. Everybody's on their feet. They're ready for North Carolina to kind of take over this game. They're down by 1, 70-69. I believe it was Van Allen Lubin who drove the lane, and he had a what appeared to be a wide open dunk, kind of beat Noah Waterman on a back cut, on a kind of like a give and go type of play. James Scott very alertly blocks it from behind. It misses the rim. So even though North Carolina got a rebound, Jalen Withers' shot didn't count when they put it back, and then Louisville just blew it open from there. Like
Hmm.
whatever was said in that huddle. So after that shot clock violation, we go to timeout. Whatever was said in that huddle, it worked because Louisville was just absolutely stone cold lockdown defense the rest of the game. North Carolina had no answer. They could not counter. They don't know what to do when their primary ball handlers can't score. Right. And I think that's a fear that Louisville's had a little bit in the past that, if Chucky Hepburn's not stirring a drink, like what happens in North Carolina, you saw that come to fruition, right? Like when they have a, all-American point guard, when your point guard is not, making things happen, Louisville took that away and they had no answer. So fantastic job. Pat Kelsey after the game credited, and I'm sorry, I'm a little bit all over the place here, but Pat Kelsey credited Mike Cassidy, who they call their offensive coordinator, for the ATO out of bounds play to Rain Smith. But I mean, shout out to Coloman and the boys as well, with a great defensive game plan, and shout out to Fat Edwards. It's another player that you got to shout out because he scored 19 plus points in the last 5 games.
Hmm.
Uh, Only scored 7 against North Carolina, 2 for 12 from the field, and that did not deter him at all. Sometimes you just have those nights where shots aren't falling, and you know he absolutely did whatever it was going to take to win that game. So shout out to the leadership from Fat. Shout out to, I mean, obviously Chucky again, fantastic, but the team as a whole just played really, really well outside of just hitting shots.
Yeah, I was really impressed. Yeah, we closed that game on a 13-1 run. I believe that's the most points James Scott has scored all year. 11 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks.
Yeah.
I don't think he really extended himself any more than he normally does on offense. But I think the team did a really great job of getting into the lane and looking for him and hitting him with lobs and knowing that their big men probably didn't respect him as much as a scorer as they did Chucky, as they did Terrence, as they did Javon when they drove, and getting it to James. And James did a solid job of finishing. He fumbled like 2 or 3 passes, 2 or 3 lobs that he should have finished. But all in all, probably his best game of the season so far. So that's good. And I thought for the first time since Case Pryor's left, we actually had interior post presence on defense. I think we had 5, and I know you said you think that one of James Scott's blocks wasn't counted either, so maybe even
Right.
6. but 5 blocks between Noah and Kadir and James Scott. And some huge plays. So I guess 6 blocks right there. If this team's averaging 6 blocks with the perimeter defense that we have, I mean that changes everything, because since Kaysen's left, it's been like 1.2 blocks a game.
Yeah, I mean, major shout out to James Scott. I mean, this is the James Scott that we expected coming into the season, right? Like, he is a guy that, yeah, he gets most of his work done within 5 feet of the basket, right? Like, that's just who he is as a player. But that doesn't mean that he can't be effective. That doesn't mean that you can't draw up stuff for him to, you know, to take away from what the other team is trying to do offensively. But I think his ability to guard, especially closing out that game without fouling, was tremendous. I think he did a fantastic job there. And that's, I mean, maybe that's what we'd been missing, was the fact that James Scott, I mean, he's been notorious for getting into foul trouble early in games, in very quick spurts. Only 1 foul against North Carolina, and that's the James Scott that you need. That's we'd been talking about, you needed your bigs to step up a little bit. I think that initially Noah Waterman drew a lot of the criticism. Noah Waterman has stepped up in a major way. James Scott and Kenai Roos were kind of the next guys that we talked about. Okay, now that Noah's stepping it up, you still need an interior defensive presence. You still need to make shots around the rim. You still need a little bit more, a stronger basketball acumen. And Kenai Roos came in and gave you some solid minutes. But James Scott was fantastic. I mean, if you don't want to go with the traditional Terrence Edwards or Chucky Hepburn as kind of a player of the game, if we're doing a player of the game right now, I think that James Scott is right there. I mean, just really, really solid down the stretch. Just took advantage of everything that North Carolina was giving him, and he's finally learning how to kind of where he fits on this team, and how to assimilate around these other players. I think that's a huge key here as well, is that you had Chucky kind of drawing a lot of attention. You had Fat kind of drawing a lot of attention. Javon Hadley has been fantastic at kind of being a bully around the rim a little bit. And North Carolina in the second half took that away. And James Scott was the benefactor of that by just being in the right place, knowing where he's supposed to be, catching lobs, running the offense a little bit through the post. I would still like to see him try to turn and score every once in a while, so other teams have to respect that a little bit more. But overall, I mean, this is the James Scott that you expected and needed. That's the James Scott you need now. Like, you need to see that consistently going forward if this is going to continue, a team that's going to continue trending towards the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think this is the James Scott that you have to expect to see from now on. And I still want to see even more. There were still a couple times, because I rewatched the game this morning, where he caught the ball 7 feet away from the basket in the paint, no help, just him and one man, and he's not even looking at the basket. It's one dribble kick out to the perimeter. Like, he's not even a threat there. And so I really, this is bare minimum, James. Like, get 8-10 points off of lobs, get 8-10 rebounds, get a couple blocks. Like, that's who he should be every single night. Speaking of MVPs, though, did Chucky Hepburn have the quietest 26 points you've ever seen in your life? Like, if you would have told me Chucky ended the game with 14 points, I would have believed you.
Yeah, I mean, he got to the line. I mean, that's
Yes.
another storyline you can get into, right? Like, Chucky shot 20 free throws. The rest of the team shot 19. So he knew that he could create mismatches on RJ Davis, on Elliot Cadeau. He could get into the bodies of the NC North Carolina bigs. And I mean, he just did a fantastic job of just taking what they were giving him. They weren't giving him many open looks from three. They weren't allowing him to penetrate and dish, but what he could do was get a mismatch one-on-one. And basically that resulted in North Carolina getting into a bunch of foul trouble. I think they had 3 guys foul out. And I mean, that's a recipe for success right there. He missed 2 on an opportunity to kind of blow the game open in the second half. But ultimately, outside of that, was really sharp. Knocking down 16 out of 20 free throws is what should be expected. But no, I mean, What more can you say about Chucky Hepburn? He's fantastic. It's almost like it reminds me a lot of that season where Carlik Jones was taking over a little bit, where you know you could just come in and just talk about Chucky every single game.
Mhm. Yeah, there hasn't been a game so far that Chucky has not had at least a chance to be considered MVP of the game, and obviously this game is no different. I also just the defense he was providing. He didn't have any steals, which is very unlike him. But RJ Davis only scored 12 points on the game. 3 of those came from the line, and then another 6 of those came in the first half whenever Chucky was sitting on the bench. So, like, he scored basically 2 field goals on Chucky the whole entire game, shot 4 of 14 on the day. Like, that's huge. RJ Davis is going to get his points. What you're doing is you're just trying to force him to shoot as many shots as possible to get to that 15, 17-point threshold that he hits every single game. So, I mean, Chucky just continues to play great defense every single night in. Even if the offense isn't there, you always know that'll be there.
There were a few things we talked about coming into this game that we were, I think the storylines that we talked about, one, we really just kind of missed the mark, as you already mentioned, Jake, where we said, if you don't hit 30% threes, you don't have a chance of winning this game. The threes weren't falling. They made six for what was it? 6 for 26, I
26.
believe.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes 4 of those 6 coming from Rain Smith. So the shots weren't falling. The free throws were not falling for anybody outside of Chucky Hepburn, right? Like Louisville had chance after chance after chance to really keep blowing this thing open. And, they missed, I think, 3 front ends of 1-and-1s. We had the sequence where Chucky missed the 2 free throws in a row. So there were instances where Louisville could have blown it open, and you'd like to see that change. But I mean, look, if you just look at the box score and say, okay, 25 for 39 from the free throw line, and you shoot 25% from 3, we'd say there's no way in hell that you win that game. But that's growth as a team. That's growth. And as much as North Carolina is lacking the traditional big man that they normally have, or the ability to win these big games that we are accustomed to, that doesn't mean that this isn't a really talented team where, they're probably going to be able to put it together and still make the NCAA tournament. I know North Carolina fans think the sky is falling right now, but I mean, all 6 of their losses are to, really quality opponents. So,
Yeah.
and they still boast those wins, like we talked about, over UCLA and over Dayton. So that's a quality North Carolina team. They're going to have some chances. They'll have 2 chances against Duke this season. They'll have chances against Clemson and Pitt to grab some solid quad 1, quad 2 wins. But speaking of that,
Yes.
Louisville now with the West Virginia win over Gonzaga, they have
Mm-hmm.
the one quad 1 win and 3 quad 2 wins.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think any of those are going to jump up to a quad 1 win, by the way?
I mean, Indiana's not, so it'd have to be West Virginia is a quad 1 win, right?
And they should
And then
remain a quad 1
they
win
should
unless
remain. IU, I can't imagine goes to anything higher than a quad
mm-mm,
2. Uh, UNC, I guess UNC, but it's at home, so it would have to be a top 25 team to be considered a quad 1.
I think so. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
tough
so
one.
I can't
Still,
imagine him. I was gonna say Louisville fans, as disgusting as it is, we're gonna have to become North Carolina fans. That's our second best win on our resume. We
mhm.
every time you see West Virginia and you see North Carolina and you see IU playing, cheer loudly. Go to the game, buy some tickets,
Yeah,
buy a jersey.
yeah. But yeah, buy like an old school MJ jersey, park it in front of the TV, and cheer for the Tar Heels. But
Yes.
in all seriousness, there's a lot of positives to take away from this. Louisville went a legitimate 8.5 deep, which is an improvement on where they'd been. Kadir Traore, not a ton of minutes, but very productive when he was in there. And
Looked
we
better.
talked
Looked a
about
lot better.
looked way better, looked like the guy that you're expecting, right?
Mhm.
And so do you think it's interesting? He has like his token 1 3-point attempt per game, and it's like not even
Yeah.
close. But I
It's
think
like
he
yeah, it's
has
like
to
as
take
soon as he
them.
gets in the game, he shoots a 3, and then he doesn't even consider shooting another,
Yeah. Well, I
outside
mean,
shot after that.
it's the scouting report, so I think you have to have that 1 3 go up just so they say, okay, he's going to be shooting them.
Yeah.
Like, I think that stretches the floor a little bit, but I mean, 6 rebounds in what, 9 minutes, is fantastic.
Played good
You know,
defense. Played really good defense
overall,
too.
he affected the game in a lot of different ways, and yeah, I think that's where you see it the most, right? Is on the boards and defensively. He's a freak athlete. Had a fantastic block in the middle of the game. You know, he's
Mhm,
one of those guys that, he's 6'5", but he plays like he's 6'8", 6'9".
mhm.
He has a, tremendous leaping ability, great wingspan. You know, that's a guy as the season goes on. I think you're going to continue to see his minutes increase. And if it's really going to be dependent on the team you're playing, right? Like, if you need a 3-point shooting floor stretcher, you'll probably see more Noah Waterman. If you need like a lockdown defender and a lot of rebounds, you're going to see a lot of Kadir Traore. But I think that you're seeing that take a little bit of pressure off of Noah Waterman as well. You know, Waterman kind of has gotten back to becoming the player that we expected him to be, right? Like, he's making plays away from the ball. He's making plays, as we talked about, to kind of generate second chance opportunities. He's making those hustle plays that you need to see him make, and he just seems like he's getting a little bit more comfortable. Still not shooting great from the free throw line. Still not sure what's up with that. That still seems like a mental thing to me, because he's a guy that he gets an open three and it looks like it's on dead on target every single time. So seems like a mental thing to me, where I don't know if he needs to start like taking jump shots from the free throw line. I don't know, but
Somebody
um,
call Shinanu up and teach him the granny style because
let's
I'm
go.
at this point you cannot be worse than what is he like a 31% free throw shooter right now?
Yeah,
It's nearing 20%, which is insane.
get Waterman and Scott shooting underhand free throws, or one-handed free throws, or left-handed free throws, something.
Anything,
But no,
anything.
I mean, overall, like, you can't. There's no player. I think every game this season you could have looked across the roster and been like, okay, we probably needed more out of that guy. I think everybody just kind of contributed what they were supposed to contribute against North Carolina. I mean, and ultimately, I think that the biggest takeaway for me is the fact that this Louisville team is getting it together a little bit more on defense, and they learned from a close win against Eastern Kentucky. Sounds like they kind of, you know, came together and said, look, we can't play like that ever again, or we will lose games. And they locked it down on defense. It was really, really fun to watch. Just
Yeah.
how well they played on defense. I mean, any other, like, major takeaways from this game?
No, I just the same point that we've harped on a couple times. Just it's impressive to see this team win in a way that we were unsure if they were capable of doing, which was not shooting well and actually still winning a game and winning a game really comfortably. I did see we are now still, I guess this is Vegas odds,
Mhm,
close to making the tournament. Outside, we're plus 205 to make the tournament now, but that's a lot better than we were
mhm.
prior to that game. So that is good. I did want to bring up one other thing that happened in the game, which I've never seen before. Um, Mikel Brown just comes in the middle of the court and commits. I was watching the game
Yeah.
and Debbie Antonelli, because I wasn't on my phone, was just like, Mikel Brown committed in between the last timeout. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I like got on my phone and I was like, oh my God. And then I saw the videos. I was like, that's so cool. So very cool. I've never seen someone do it before. So you were in the stadium. I would love to know what that was like.
Yeah, so like I said, there were some very, very quiet murmurings. Like, we cannot say what's going to happen, but something is going to happen in this game. And so I showed up and I'm like, I don't know what it is. Like, is there a special guest? Like, but the one thing that I was kind of cognizant of was that Michael Brown, uh, if he wasn't in town, was going to be in town, Thursday or Friday for a tournament here in Louisville.
Mm,
And so I was at least cognizant of that and just kind of looking around to see, if he was in the house, uh, but never crossed my mind that he would actually make a commitment announcement. Maybe like it would come through, one like Tipton edits, or one of these guys would come out and
hmm
announce during the game, and then maybe he'd be recognized somehow behind the scenes. But this is modern college basketball, and the way that he did it was so creative and unique. But to answer your question about the vibes in the arena, basically, under 8 timeout comes, everybody's kind of in their seat enjoying the game. It's going pretty well so far. and they just said, please turn your attention to the screen for a special announcement. All the lights go out, they play the video, and then you see Mikel Brown's just walking out onto the court. No like big announcement or anything, but he was just out there kind of throwing the L's up with the fam, and just the energy. There's definitely a change of energy in the arena for sure. Uh, I would say that 60% of fans were aware of, and I think that's probably a pretty good estimate. I'd say, most of like the bigger fans, bigger donor fans or what have you, that kind of just show up and watch the games, probably don't follow recruiting super closely, but it really hit home on how big of a commitment it was, how locked in and focused on Louisville he is, and how good of a job the coaching staff does of keeping it secret.
Mm-hmm.
Because he committed back in the early signing period, or signed in the early signing period in November, and then they just locked it down and didn't say anything,
Yeah, I'd never.
which
I
is
can't.
very
How does that
impressive.
happen? Yeah.
I mean, it was there were reports back in November that Michael Brown had signed, and nothing really ever came of it. And
Mm-hmm.
so the thought process after that, I don't know if you remember, people basically just said, "Oh, well, he's going to wait until the spring signing period to make an
Mm-hmm.
official decision." We're like, "Well, shit." It really felt like we had this guy. It really felt like he was kind of the future. And even as recent as 3 weeks ago, and if you want to go back, we actually really discussed Mikel in depth. We actually cut that up, and that's its own entity on YouTube now. And then anywhere you find us on your podcast platforms, we did about 20 minutes on what he means to this team and how you build around him. Um, but as far as just keeping that under wraps in this day and age is fantastic, and that means a lot to me because it doesn't feel like, it never felt like a look at me moment, or like, I'm bigger than this program, or I'm bigger than this moment, or it was it, they did it in about as humble of a way as you can go in front of 15,000 people and make an announcement that you're coming there. But I would love to see something like that happen more often. Like, I'd love if like the lights go out in February and Nate Mint walks out, right? Like, that would be pretty sick if they could coordinate it like that. But I have this I'm drawn to players that don't make it about them. And this is not to dog on anybody, but Louisville landed a really talented special player in Trenton Flowers last year. And then, if you remember, he pulled out and went to New Zealand like right before the season. And his
Mm-hmm.
family basically just came out and said, well, this is the best for them. And Louisville has plenty of time to get somebody in. And we're like, classes start tomorrow, bro. Like, I don't know if you know how college basketball works. But even if yes, you could sign somebody later on down the road, but they have to be enrolled in school. You can't just go, oh, well, no, we're going to jump into Econ 101
Mm-hmm.
and chemistry and and two communication classes and walking class. We can't just jump into those in October, buddy. Like, the school semester starts like late August, early September. So it was such a juxtaposition to the way that that was handled, because in this day and age, everything is about me, and how can I increase my product and my value as a whole. And for him to just keep this a complete secret and make it something that's unique and special, was really kind of touching to see. And I think it really gave us a little bit of a spark and a boost, because that's something that, as far as I'm aware, I don't think anybody's ever done something like that.
I'd never
So
seen it before.
yeah, all around
Yeah.
fantastic the way that was announced.
How do you, as an 18-year-old, if I made a decision to go play at Louisville or Virginia or wherever it is, I couldn't keep my fucking mouth shut. How for a month did he not let this secret come out? Is insane to me, and it shows a level of maturity that I still don't know if I possess to this day. And I think you're right. It translates over to his game. If you watch him, he is just like the consummate professional. Like, he is point guard one for a reason. And it's not like, oh, he's a freak athlete. He just blows by people and he just needs to pick up the skills to catch up. Kind of like how Russell Westbrook was in late high school, early college. Like, no, he has all the skills. His body had to catch up to him. He already had the skills. He was just 5'7" as of like 2 or 3 years ago, and now he's 6'3". And you just watch him, and like he played at least his junior year in the OTE, the Overtime Elite League, and that is a league produced by middle schoolers. I'm still under the impression of.
Right.
That is made their target audience is 11-year-olds. Like, I swear to God,
Yes.
like, you watch a game and you're like, holy like, I'm getting autism just looking at this.
They're like,
Like, it is a struggle to watch at times, the way they cut cameras and they like try and bring on
yeah.
personalities. Like, literally a foul happened, and the sideline reporter that I was watching today of Mikel Brown's game went up to the referee in the middle of the game and asked him why he called that foul. What did he see right there? And I was like, that is insane behavior. This is an unserious league. But there's
They're
a
like,
lot of
oh,
talent in that league.
Mikel Brown goes to the bucket and he just got slimed. We have no idea what just happened. The
Yeah.
slime cannons just came out of nowhere. We have no
Mhm.
idea. Yeah, that's the sixth man for the whatever the I don't even know what their team names are. But yeah,
Oh,
it's kind of it's a very hokey, kind of weirdly produced league. But for him to be, I mean, I don't know if you remember when you were, well, I mean, you kind of talked about it a little bit, but I was such an idiot when I was like 16 or 17. Like, you're just
mhm.
dumb. Your brain's not fully developed. You're not, your body's not fully developed. You're just learning what this thing called life is and making all kinds of stupid mistakes and saying stupid things. And
I'm still an
um,
idiot.
yeah, exactly. I mean, we're still idiots. And Michael Brown, he handles things well. He was just on the Mike Rutherford show this evening, and he sounds like a NBA player. Like the
Mhm.
way that he presents himself, the way he talks, just it's I'm excited to have him in just as a personality, and reminds me a little bit of Sky Clark, just in the way that he, you know, you can tell that he is going to be a calming presence through adversity. I know that's a weird comparison because
Yeah,
the
you're gonna
Kenny
you're gonna
Pickett
scare
stuff,
you're
and
gonna scare the listeners there a little bit.
yeah. But if you remember, Sky Clark left Illinois to take care of his sick father.
Yeah.
So like that's the reason I make a comparison like that, because he had the maturity and wherewithal to make decisions, life choices, that would impact him down the road, rather than just make whatever the quick money grab is, or be some kind of overbearing personality, or try to be something that you're not. He just seems like he's just a very down to earth, humble kind of kid, who also happens to be the number one point guard in the country.
Yeah.
So uh,
I was
we
gonna
we
say,
talked. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna do the breakdown later on in like some video formats, so I won't go too deep into
Yeah.
who he is as a player, but Presley, this is the most talented high school player I've ever like fully scouted. And granted, I didn't go watch full games Skipper Flag. Like, I watched him play whenever he's on TV, but I didn't go out and watch him. Like, when we got Dennis last year, when we got Trenton Flowers last year, I was excited. They were 5 stars. I watched their games and I left like 50-50. Like, yeah, Dennis is 7 foot, but he has almost no athleticism in his body. He has the hand-eye coordination of like a blind elephant. And then even with Trenton, like, he was very, very selfish player, didn't really play a lot of defense, took really poor shots. So there were a lot of concerns. Like, as many highs as I saw in their games, I saw just as many lows. It's not that way with Mikel Brown. Like, if there's one thing you had to say, he just needs to put on a little more weight. He's only 170 pounds right now. If he can get to 180, 190, that's the most fixable thing. Like, there are almost no flaws in this 18-year-old's game. It is insane to watch him play. He is, and I already texted you this. He's LaMelo Ball. Like, if you've seen LaMelo Ball play, he's LaMelo Ball, except for he's not 6'7". He's 6'3". Like, you watch him and just those quick combination dribbles, handles, step back three, like vision like you've never seen before. He's so impressive. Fans have every right and reason to be excited for this.
Yeah, I was trying to make like a good comparison to something that my very unathletic self would make. And I think that like the comparison of like, um you know like a kid who's a golf prodigy that goes out and he just masters a short game as a kid. If you remember, Tiger Woods' dad, as he was growing up, always discussed the fact that Tiger wasn't allowed to hit a lot of drivers or irons. He wasn't allowed to do anything outside of, stuff right up near the green until he got older. And the reason being because what's the sense in being, 80 pounds and trying to learn how to hit the golf ball 300 yards, hit fairways, hit greens, and the comparison for those, or the the way that the story would go for somebody who isn't familiar with golf or doesn't follow that very much. Basically, learn the fundamentals first. And I think for Mikel Brown, he was a kid who was extremely undersized, but had such a high ceiling at such a young age. And then once he's hit that requisite size, athleticism, and skill set that comes with a high level player, he already has all the tools in his arsenal, and now the ceiling gets that much higher. So that's kind of the kind of take on Michael Brown, is he's just a guy who it's just in his nature to be, an elite level ball handler, and to be a guy who can, just kind of be a calming presence in the game for you. But my question for you, Jake, would be, as Louisville is preparing for next season, and yes, this is a huge skip ahead, right? But you're going from Chucky Hepburn, who is by all accounts going to be a quasi All American, definitely probably a first or second team ACC type of player. So you're going from that to now having Michael Brown and Kobe Rogers being kind of the centerpieces of your backcourt. And so my question for you would be, how do you build around that, and what are the, when you watch Michael Brown's game, what are the learning curves that fans are going to, experience, as they're entering next season?
Yeah. So I mean, with the team we have now, I mean, we've got Mikel, we've got Kobe Rogers, we've got Corin Johnson. That's already one more guard than we currently have active right now, so that's huge. I would look for PK to probably add one more shooter. If you can find a Rain Smith in the portal, I think that's the ideal add there, because Corin is a solid good shooter. Mikel's a good shooter. Kobe Rogers is a solid shooter. But there's no, like, I think every single year, if he can have a Rain Smith, if he can have a 40% plus guy who's literally out there to shoot 8 threes a game, he's going to get that. I think that's what this team needs. What was your
Yeah,
second
and
question? One more time.
well, I was just going to say those guys are out there every
Oh, yeah.
single year. Like, look at Kobe Bryant for Kentucky. Like,
Hmm.
there are plenty of guys out there that are quality guards that can also just shoot the shit out of the ball. And that's what Louisville needs, right? Like, they need one or two of those guys every single year, that can be your go-to guy if you need a shot in the clutch. But no, like, how will what are going to be the struggles, right? Like, there's clearly going to be a drop off going from a fifth year senior who has started every game in his career to a guy, albeit, unbelievable talent, but he's going to have to assimilate into the college game, and uh, you know be a cog, and not just like the main piece on this roster. So what are the, when you're watching his tape, what are the things that Louisville will need to, or Louisville fans will need to be prepared for, that he's going to have to learn, as he's coming up through the college game?
I know this probably sounds ridiculous, but at least from an offensive standpoint, I don't know how much of a letdown Mikel is going to be compared to Chucky. And Chucky is phenomenal, but that's just how good Mikel is. I'm sure that we'll have some freshman decision making that comes into play, where you just got a 19-year-old on the ball that hasn't played college basketball for 4 years. But from a skill perspective, from a playmaking perspective, from a shooting perspective, he is just as talented as Chucky is. Chucky probably finishes a little bit better in the paint. Though I will say, though, the fall off will probably be more on the defensive end, because obviously no one is as good of a defender as Chucky Hepburn is. He is probably the best on ball defender in college basketball, if not at least top three. So I think on the defensive side, you'll definitely see some fall off there, because he is young. He is only 165 pounds, but he does present more length than Chucky does, but he's certainly not, and no one is the on ball defender. So if there's anything that fans need to be aware of going from Chucky to now Mikel, it's that the defense will fall off, but the defense would fall off if we added
With any
anybody, because
player,
no one
any
is
player.
that good.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think that the comparison I draw was right there in the game last night, and Elliot Cadeau. He was rated very similarly to Mikel Brown coming out of high school. Louisville fans, if you follow recruiting at all, would be familiar with Elliot Cadeau because he was a guy that Kenny Payne, really tried to go after, and I think Louisville was in his top 3 or top 5 coming out of high school, and so I think that's a good comparison there. And if you're watching the game last night, I'm not sure you look at Elliot Cadeau as a guy that like really stood out. And maybe I'm totally missing that because I'm paying too much attention to what's happening with Louisville. Uh, but that'd be my concern, right? Is that you're going from this veteran, experienced guard that you trust with your life, right? To Michael Brown, you hear Pat Kelsey say, "Okay, well, you're PG1. We're gonna go to Final Fours and win national championships with you." And so that's really my only concern that I'm just trying to mentally prepare for is until we see him on the court with the other pieces around him. Uh, I'm mentally preparing a little bit for the freshman mistakes, but it sounds like they're trying to build the future around him. And then you also have the caveat of the fact that he is probably a one and done. Maybe you get 2 years out of Michael Brown. So those are a couple things that I'm watching. But yeah, like you said, if you're making a comparison to a guy like LaMelo Ball, I think that you take UCLA LaMelo Ball in a heartbeat, right?
No, that's Lonzo. Lamelo never
I'm
played
sorry.
it.
Yes,
Yeah, Lamelo never
yes.
played
I
in college,
apologize.
unfortunately.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just trying to kind of do my due diligence because again, this is kind of new for me. I mean, it's kind of new for all of us, right? Like having a player like this commit
Landing
and
this talented
actually
of players.
play, right? Like when you've landed guys in the past. Okay, so outside of Samardo Samuels, this is really the biggest name player to ever come into this program. It's pretty crazy to even think of or compartmentalize like that. But Louisville's never landed like the number one guard in the class, and that guard come in and actually play and contribute on the roster. If you go back to Sebastian Telfair, obviously went straight to the pros. You go back to Trenton Flowers, went straight to the pros. And so really Louisville's never experienced this when you've brought in high level guards in the past. It was like a Peyton Siva who was like, or a Donovan Mitchell who were like a top 30 to 40 type of player where they really had a freshman season where they were learning behind somebody. And this is a guy that it sounds like they're going to bring him in to kind of take over, take the reins of this program and be the straw that stirs the drink as a true freshman. So really, I think to me, and again, I apologize for having a goof up there, but I mean, it's true. This is not something that we've ever had to think about or consider. And I think a lot of fans, until they really see him on the court, they're going to have some hesitancy just because we've been snake bitten in the past with the type of players you've landed. And really, the high level players that you've landed that have come in, like a Samardo Samuels or a Shane Behannon, one of those types of players that have come in and been an immediate impact guy, have been more of like a big man or a presence down low. So really a new learning experience for Louisville overall. And I'm just fascinated by the storyline and in the upcoming offseason of how he assimilates with this roster, who he becomes as a player, and how Louisville really builds around him. Do they bring in another like a Jared West or Noah Locke type of player? I don't think they're going to get like a Carly Jones type of player or a Chucky Hepburn just because nobody wants to come in and compete with that. But what are the pieces that are next to him, and how do you ultimately build this roster around him? But I mean, right now, like you talked about, you have Kobe Rogers, who to me, I mean, he could easily be PG1, right? Like, do you play Kobe Rogers and Michael Brown together? Are those two guys that can play well together, or is Michael the starter and Kobe comes off the bench and gives you 25, 30 minutes a game? And then how do they assimilate with everybody else? Like, is who ultimately comes back? Is James Scott probably is still in the fold? Kenai Ruths. I'm just looking over draft boards just very casually today, and Kenai Ruths comes up a few times as a guy who is going to be, in the top 50, 60 type of players in the 2026 class. So really, how are you starting to build the roster around this? is what's going to fascinate me next. Any other thoughts about, how he's going to fit and, what kind of players that he'd play well with? And do you think that Louisville should bring in a veteran presence, kind of help him ease into this? Ultimately, with the thought of around this time next season, you're starting to really, let go of the reins and let him kind of be the leader on this team.
Yeah, I think it's shooting guards, not literal shooting guards, guards that can shoot. 3-point shooting guards is what this team needs because I think it'll be Mikel starting, likely Corin Johnson at the 2 starting, but I thought Corin should start this year and he came off the bench, so maybe he's just a 6 man.
Yeah.
Maybe it is Kobe or maybe it's a 3-point shooting guard off the bench. But I don't see any way that he doesn't play at least 25, 30 minutes a game with the talent level that he has. It is, and Elliot Cadeau, I'm sorry, is not near the player that Mikel Brown is even now as a sophomore. Elliot Cadeau just doesn't have an offensive game. He's a great playmaker and he's a solid defender, but he's undersized and can't score. Mikel does not have those issues whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm always interested, like how does Elliot Cadeau end up being the number 12 player in his class? And granted, like nothing against Elliot Cadeau, he's absolutely a Power 5 level starter, and he's a fine addition to North Carolina. But when you watch Elliot Cadeau play alongside RJ Davis, there's a clear gap between those two players, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
that's what's going to interest me is how does Michael Brown how does his game translate to the college level? What do you think about his speed? Like, if you could compare his quickness to somebody, like I don't think he's a Peyton Seaver or Russ Smith, but I don't think
Mm-mm.
he's a slouch either. Like what? How does his speed, equate to what we're seeing in the college game?
That's a good question because he is not. I think, and that's kind of the reason I think he might be at Lowell for 2 years, because he doesn't have. I mean, he has NBA height. He doesn't have NBA strength or size yet. Right now, he has length. He's 6'6". I know you told me that his wingspan's 6'6". But he's not the most athletic or fastest guy. Like he can dunk, he can get by people, but he plays with pace. Like the reason he's able to get past people is because he slows down, goes tween behind the back, and then attacks. Like it's pace, it's ball handling. It's not just like head down, blow past you. Like it's not Tyler Johnson, who was a million
Right.
miles a minute with the ball in his hand. He's a lot more pacier, a little bit faster than like a Carlick Jones. Like Carlick Jones is objectively slow for college basketball. He's an athletic
Mhm,
person, but like for college
mhm.
basketball, NBA level, he is not fast at all. So I would compare him a step above Carlick Jones in the speed factor of things, but makes up for it with burst, with pace, with ball handling, and doesn't have an issue getting past people at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, other guards that people probably know in college basketball now, like a Caleb Love, a Sky Clark, like that's kind of who it reminds me of. He has that polish and athleticism of, your prototypical college basketball point guard. But yeah, I mean, we're going to get into this a lot more as the season goes on. And as we get into the off season, he's finally, officially a Cardinal enrolled in school and everything like that. So, a lot more to discuss about Mikel Brown. What I do want to jump into though is Louisville's upcoming game against Virginia, because we are at the point now where it's like, okay, well, this is very real that Louisville could not only make the NCAA tournament, but they could be, you could be in the conversation of getting into like a 5, 6, 7 seed type of team, which I think ultimately, if you want to have the best chance of making a run, you got to get into, one of those seed lines, unless, there's always the year where, a 2 seed loses and a 4 seed loses in the same bracket, and some team just kind of is able to kind of carve their way into an Elite Eight, Final Four type of run, not having to face a higher seed. But, we don't want to think about those hypotheticals. You want to think about how can you place yourself the best in the NCAA tournament. And I think part of building your resume is you cannot lose games like this one at Virginia on Saturday. Now, while this would be still considered a quad two wins are not all built the same, right? Like this Virginia team doesn't hold a candle to what North Carolina is, but you are going on the road. You are playing a team that plays an incredibly different style than what you've seen. And so that brings us to the KenPom update, right? So very, very quickly running over Louisville. So Louisville they've slowed it down a little bit. We started out the season, they were one of the fastest paced teams in the country. We talked about North Carolina, sixth fastest pace in the country. Louisville has gone all the way back to 95th. So their average possession length went from high 13 second to low 14 seconds per possession. They're at 16.6 per possession on offense, 17.5 on defense. So Louisville's definitely slowing it down. Obviously, we saw at the end of the game against UNC that they were slowing it down quite a bit. Louisville now ranked 50th offensively and 62nd defensively. So again, the numbers are telling you that this is a team that's trending for the most part in the right direction. Louisville now, for the number of threes that they shoot, they are the second worst three-point shooting team in the country. Still not sure that the stats are indicative of that because they're taking open shots. So it's not like they're just jacking a bunch of threes just for S and Gs, right? Like they are a team that can shoot the three ball that just hasn't shot the three ball well, with some small exceptions, right? Kentucky, Florida State, they really were hitting a lot of threes. First half of Duke, comes to mind as well. Indiana. So there have been games where you've seen them shoot the three ball well, but overall, Louisville 54th in KenPom, up from 60th prior to the North Carolina game. And they face a Virginia team that statistically could just not be any different than them. So we said Louisville is 96th, 95th in the country in average possession length. Virginia, you want to take a crack at Virginia's average possession length? Like where they rank?
Oh, probably like almost dead last. I know they're last in the nation in fast break points, so I'm going to say like 342nd or something like that.
Yeah, 360. So average
Oh, so they
possession
are
length
last?
20. Yeah, pretty damn close. I think there's 364 teams. Could be wrong
Okay,
about
yeah.
that. I'd have to double check on that. But yeah, I mean, if they're not last, they're pretty damn close, right? So average possession length is 20.7. That's basically holding the ball for an additional 6 or 7 passes. So they're going to make you defend for that full shot clock, right? So you got to keep in mind, like breakaway dunks, that counts as an offensive possession. So like they're really like the typical slow it down, full or half court set. They are not even looking for a shot until they're 25 seconds in. So although Tony Bennet is gone, his fingerprints are all over this team for Virginia. Defensively, they are 350th in the country in average possession length. So teams that try to speed it up have not been super successful. If you look at the scores in Virginia games so far this year, 65 to 56, 62 to 45, 70 to 60, 64 42, 80 to 55. St. John's and Florida are the only two teams that have reached the 80 mark against them. St. John's blew them out of the water, 80 to 55, and then Florida took them down 87 to 69. But I mean, there's other games. They just played NC State to a 70 to 67 game. So when you take that into consideration, if you're Louisville, how do you counteract that? Like, is this a game that plays in Louisville's hands well because of the depth, or do you think they're going to try to push the pace a little bit?
Do I think Louisville's going to push the pace or Virginia's going to push the pace?
Yeah, no, I don't think Virginia's would push the pace if you told them they were
Okay,
going to
yeah.
die if they did. Um,
No, yeah. No, I think it's a beneficial matchup for Louisville. Going into the season, Tony Bennett leaves, and they've got Ron Sanchez now as the interim. And I was like, hey, maybe I won't hate watching Virginia play basketball. And then Ron Sanchez said, "Fuck you, you stupid bitch. You'll hate it even more." God, they still play the ugliest brand of basketball in the world. They are the same Virginia team they have been for the last 20 years, except for they just have less talent this year. If you're Louisville, I think you want to actually, for the once we're going to say we want to speed the game up, I want to see them try and push in transition, because even if we exert ourselves in transition, Virginia's going to play so slowly on offense that we're not going to be exhausted. Like, we're not going to have to worry about, oh no, we're only going 8 deep. Are we going to be able to play this style the whole entire time? Because Virginia's going to keep it so slow. So I think pushing in transition will be huge. Another thing, like we said, Virginia averages like 2.7 fast break points a game, 2.92 actually, that's the number. That's so big for Louisville to be able to offensive rebound. If you notice in that UNC game, I think we only had like 8 offensive rebounds, which is really low for this Louisville team. We're typically around like 11, 12, 15, sometimes even 20 on our best games. But we were so clearly concerned with North Carolina being able to get out in transition, get a missed basket, and go, that we were only sending like 2 when we normally send 3, 4, even sometimes 5 to the glass. And so I think Coach Kelsey will know that this UVA team has absolutely no interest in bringing the ball up the court quickly at all, and will be able to crash 3, 4, 5 guys at a time. They've got a negative, or is it negative? Yeah, a negative, like barely negative rebounding margin, which you typically don't see this early into the year, because half of their schedule is Campbell and Coppin State and Manhattan and Bethune-Cookman. Like, those are teams that you should be plus 15, plus 20 on the glass. So I think that's a huge advantage for Louisville. The one thing that is scary about this UVA team is they can shoot the shit out of the ball.
Yes.
Like, really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look down their roster, and that was going to be my first point, when when you go down the UVA roster, not crazy deep, but pretty much everybody on the roster can shoot the 3 ball really well. So Elijah Saunders, Andrew Rode, Day Ames, and Isaac McNeely are the guys that you're watching that can shoot the 3 ball. And they also have a guy named Tane Murray that doesn't play as many minutes, but still shoots the 3 ball really well. So you're looking at 39.4% from deep, 46.9 and 47.8 for their 2 top players, Andrew Rode and Day Ames. So yeah, 47% and 48% from 3-point range. They don't shoot a ton of threes.
And Isaac McNeely shoots 45%, who's their
there you
leading
go.
scorer.
Isaac McNeely. 44%, 45% from the field, or from 3-point range. So yeah, these are dudes that they're going to slow it down, but they're going to get an open look. And so I guess my question for you, Jake, who is the player to watch? Like, who is the guy that if Louisville slows this player down, then they have the best chance of beating Virginia?
I think it's Isaac McNeely or it's Andrew Rode. Those are the 2 guys. Rode's shooting 47% from 3. McNeely is shooting 45%. McNeely scores like 12 a game, and then Rode only scores like 9 or 10, but they both get 3 assists a game, which is a ton for this Virginia team, because they just have so few possessions. So averaging 3 assists for this team is like an actual guard on a normal team averaging 5 or 6 a game. So those are 2 guys. But if I had to pick one, it's Isaac McNeely. He has the ball in his hands the most. He scores the most points for him. He's one of a few guys that can actually create his own shot and can create for others. And he's a great shooter as well. So if there's anyone you can slow down or you want to slow down, it's Isaac McNeely. And luck has it that we have a guy named Chucky Hepburn who will probably be in his pocket for 95% of the time that he's on the court.
Yeah. I mean, is that the guy? So that was going to be my natural next question, right? Like, who's the most important player for Louisville to slow this Virginia team? Is it Chucky Hepburn?
Yeah, I think it has to be Chucky Hepburn, because I've been watching him. Isaac McNeely is really the only guy that consistently gets into the paint. Him and Rode can do it a little bit as well, but that's really about it. And so if you can take away one of their 2 facilitators, one of their 2 guys that can actually create shots for others, their offense is already so slow and already so bad. That's just a borderline debilitating for this Virginia team. God, if there's any game that we can shoot threes, please let it be this one, because this Virginia team is going to let us shoot threes. They are going to play that tight pack line defense where they don't want to extend. But if Noah Waterman can hit 2 and Rain can hit 3 and Chucky can hit 1 in the first half, they're going to have to extend that defense out. And that's where you start to find holes, pick holes, find flaws in this defense. So another game where I say if we don't shoot well, we might lose. But who knows? They proved me wrong last time.
So Jacob Kofi, I think is it Kofi or Coffee? I think it's Kofi. Is it
Kofi, yeah.
A true freshman who starts for them. He is a threat to shoot from deep, but he's only made 7 threes on the season. And then you have Blake Buchanan as well, who is more of a traditional big that comes off the bench, and then TJ Power, who's a little bit more of a traditional 4 or 5 man. Who for Louisville needs to step up, and how do they step up against these guys?
That's a good question. I mean, we already talked about Chucky, particularly on the defensive end, but I mean, if Chucky ever has a bad game, which he hasn't really so far, we will probably struggle. Virginia, like we've seen in years past, like they're going to string together great defensive possessions back to back to back to back where you have to hold the ball for 20, 25, 28 seconds. And so a guy like Terrence Edwards is going to be huge because there's going to be probably 5, 10, maybe even 15 possessions in this game where Louisville doesn't really get a wide open look. There's 8 seconds left in the shot clock and Terrence Edwards has the ball in his hand, and you're just going to have to take your man one-on-one and hit a tough shot. And Terrence can do that. He's shown that he can do that. So if there's anyone, at least offensively, I think it's got to be Terrence Edwards, because I think we know Chucky will step up, and we kind of know that the other guys are limited in their roles, especially when it comes to shot creation. So if it's anyone, it's got to be Terrence in this game. He cannot score 7 points like he did last night.
Yeah. I mean, like we said, it's all about possessions here. And I think the main concern for me is just Louisville's ability to hold on to the ball. They've done a much better job, save the EKU game. They've done a much better job of holding on to the ball, not turning it over, not allowing the opponent to get extra free possessions, which we know that when Virginia gets the ball, they're one of the only teams in the country where you could turn the ball over in the open court and they might have a 2-on-1 and pull it back out, right? Like they're
dribbling that one out.
So there are, by the way, just confirmed 364 teams in the country in Division I basketball. They're 360th in pace, and they are 356 out of 364 teams in points scored per game, but they are 11th in points allowed per game. So it's all about these possessions, and Louisville has to value each possession even more than they already are. And I think that that's where, you really like having 2 guys, really 3 guys like Chucky Hepburn, Fat Edwards, and Rain Smith, 3 guys that really don't turn the ball over a lot. Virginia's not going to try, they're not going to pressure you a crazy amount to try to turn you over, but they will gladly take advantage of your mistakes. And they'll gladly, turn a 4-minute segment of a game into 6 possessions total, and neither team scores any points and be super happy about that. So to me, I think this could be a game where Louisville just tries to come out the gates and take a lead, and then that really plays in their hand, right? Like you take a 10 to 15 point lead on this team, like it's going to be really difficult for them to string possessions together where they can score and make a comeback. So, and I think that's kind of how they were blown out by a couple of quality opponents that they played so far. Was the opponent was able to get a little bit of a lead, and then Virginia playing from behind. It's just basic numbers, right? Like if you have a limited number of possessions, it's just really difficult to make a comeback from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna bring up before we ended the pod here. Like they've played 6 good teams, they've lost 5 of them.
Mhm.
Like their wins are against Campbell, Coppin State, Manhattan, Holy Cross, Bethune-Cookman, American, Villanova, who was really, really bad this year, and then NC State. Their best win by far is NC State, and they're not even a top 100 team in the nation. They played Tennessee, lost by 22, which so did we, or lost by 20 plus. So I can't really say anything there. Lost by 25 to St. John's, lost by 18 to Florida, lost by 12 to SMU, which SMU is better than I think we all expected, similar to the way they were in football. So this Virginia team, really, when they've played talented teams, have not played that well. NC State's by far their best win. I think this Louisville team, barring Virginia hitting 12, 14 threes and Louisville shooting 24% from 3, I think this should be a winnable game. I think we kill them on the boards. I think the dichotomy of paces, us being so fast and them trying to be so slow, is an advantage for us. And I think we have enough guys who can create their own shots to where we should be able to win this game. And I'd say win it by 5 to 10 points, which is really like 15 to 20 when you play Virginia.
Yeah, if you look at the teams that have really done a great job against Virginia this year, outside of Tennessee, they're really the anomaly. SMU, Florida, St. John's, and Memphis all play a really fast pace, like quicker than what Louisville is coming in at right now. Tennessee is just a fantastic defensive team, but all of those teams have a solid defensive identity and they push the pace a lot. And Virginia really struggled to keep up with that. Memphis, that's kind of a weird one for me because I think that's a really quality, talented Memphis team, but still Memphis with Penny Hardaway, Nolan Smith, and those boys. So, it's hard to really compare that team to anybody else. But I mean, to me, it stands out so far is that SMU game, Florida, St. John's, teams that really took it to them on defense, and then they're able to, generate extra possessions, speed things up. Virginia's not able to keep up with that. And so that's what stands out to me is if Louisville is able to push that pace and keep it under control, right? Like it's one thing if you're pushing the pace and you turn it over because then Virginia's just going to soak up 30 more seconds. But yeah, if you can push the pace, score early, get out to like a 15-8 type of lead, it's going to be really hard for them to combat that and compete with that. And I think that's one difference between this Virginia team and Virginia teams of the past is they really don't have a bunch of go-to guys. They just have they can shoot the ball really well and they defend, extremely well. But again, a lot of that has to do with just the pace of the game and the way that they just kind of stick to their guns and they just slow it down. But yeah, I mean, if you get to 10 minutes left in the game and Louisville's up by 10, I think you're feeling really good about this game. I do struggle to, think about a scenario where it's like a 50-46 type of game with Virginia having the lead with 5 minutes left. Like that's going to be a really, really difficult place to come from. But I think that Louisville's built really well to handle that. Score prediction. What do you got for score prediction against Virginia?
What's the most Virginia scored in a game is what, like 62 or 63? Is it? No, never mind. Sorry, they scored 74 against Manhattan.
Yeah. But
I don't think they're scoring 74 in this one.
No.
Give me a score prediction. I'd say Virginia 62, Louisville 71.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid, area, range to put it in. I think that, they're coming off kind of a high of beating North Carolina at home, turn of the new year. It feels like they're turning over a new leaf, but you need to see back-to-back games where they play really solidly because the schedule gets really tough after this, right? You go back home and play Clemson. You have who else am I missing? There's somebody else in between, right? No. So you go back.
I'd have to look and
I get so confused. Like, I'm thinking it's the weekend. It's not. It's a weekday. So you play Virginia, and then you go back home and play Clemson and Pitt back to back, right? So KenPom has this as a 66-64 game, giving Louisville a 56% chance of winning this game. And I really see this being like I want to say like 74-58 type of game. I think this is a game that Louisville can really dictate what they want to do against this Virginia team. I think now that you're starting to build wins against teams with quality players on the roster, I think that this Louisville team is gaining a lot of confidence. They're learning how to win games in different ways. There will be very frustrating moments of this game, but I think it's a game where you could see some spurts where Louisville goes on, like a 10-2, 14-5 type of run and really blow this thing open. But I would love to see Louisville just get the ball. Like, I can't remember what team it was that they played earlier this season where the opponent won the tip off and just immediately sprinted to the basket and tried to score, right? Like that's what Louisville needs to do. Just kind of take it to them and really, I probably said this 10 times already, dictate the pace of the game. I think if you can do that, then this is a game that you should win. And this is a game that you cannot afford to lose if you want to continue building an NCAA tournament resume. Any other thoughts on Virginia before we get out of here?
Nope. If you've seen Virginia play anytime in the last 10 years, they are still the exact same team, except for they have less individual talent this year, but they are overall a better shooting team than they normally are. And that's really the case of Virginia. These next three games are huge. It's a quad 2 opportunity win at Virginia, and then it's 2 back-to-back quad 1 wins at home next week. And those are few and far between. After that, you've got Virginia at home, but that's a quad 3, just where they're sitting now. Wake Forest is a quad 2, I think. SMU might be a quad 1 because that's on the road.
Yeah, it'll really depend.
Yeah, that'd be a quad 1 because they're ranked 30th.
Yeah, as of right now, it would be.
So I mean, you've got a few more, but these are probably 3 out of maybe like 6 or 7 quad 1, quad 2 wins. We have available to us in the rest of the season. So this is a huge week, and I'm happy that we were able to beat UNC and gain positive momentum. And see, looks like Kadir is getting back to playing shape and feeling a little bit more confident, which is huge just from a depth perspective. So I'm excited. Nothing makes me happier than beating Clemson in football and Virginia in basketball. And even when Virginia sucks, I still love to watch us beat them.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for Saturday.
I can't wait, man. This is a huge, just keep the momentum going type of game. Like, if you keep the momentum going here,
Mhm.
you're starting to build your narrative as a team nationally. You're going to start seeing Louisville start receiving votes again in the AP poll. You're going to start seeing, a more national audience start to turn their attention towards who this team is and what they could be. And I can't wait, man. I can't wait. That's all we got for you guys so far this week. We will see you after the Virginia game. Go Cards, beat the Who's. Follow us on the socials if you don't mind. At the State of Lou. Follow us on Instagram. Lots of things happen there. At Jake, or excuse me, I always want to say at Jake Hook, but it's not. It's at UofL_updates. At Press Meyer. Until next time, let's get out of here and go Cards.